In this lesson, we'll go over some of the export options if you're planning to do rendering in an external program. To export maps, simply right-click in the viewport and choose Export Textures. This will bring up the Export dialog. First, let's have a look at the texture sets. Now, these represent the texture sets we've been working with throughout the project. We have our head and the legs texture set. The checkboxes indicate which texture set will be exported. So if I'm only working on the top half, I can disable the legs and only have the head portion exported. Here we have the resolution of the maps being exported. We set our project size to 2048, but we can always change this on export, and these resolutions are independent from one another. So say if we're doing some close-ups of the head, we can increase this to 4K while the legs is half the resolution. At the very top is a location of where your maps will be exported, which is quite self-explanatory. Here we have the format of the bitmaps, so I'll choose PNG for now. And we can also select the bit depth, which I'll leave at 8. Next is the config. And when we open this drop-down, you'll see a list of presets. And what these are presets for exporting maps to common applications. So we have things like Unity 5 and V-Ray, and just the basic PBR Metal Rough, which is what we've been using throughout the project. So I'll just choose that for now. Now, if we open up the drop-down for the texture sets, this will show what maps are actually being exported and their corresponding file names. I'm using PBR Metal Rough config, so these are the maps being exported. If I change it to Unity 5 Standard Metallic, these are the maps that are going to be exported. Or if we want, we can change it to V-Ray, and this will give me these outputs. So depending on where you'll be rendering the model, you want to pick the proper configuration. For now, I'll just stick with the PBR Metal Rough. Next is the common padding area, which is set to dilation infinite. Now, this is important for those of you using an engine where your textures will get MIPed. Basically, enabling this will bleed the pixels outside of the UV shells. So if for some reason you don't want this to happen, you can disable this by choosing no padding. You also have some other options listed here. I'll just leave it at the default setting. You'll also notice that each of the texture sets have an override padding option. What this will allow you to do is set a different padding option for each of the texture sets, if that's something that you'd like to do. If you're working with something that doesn't fall into any of the preset exports that ship with Painter, we can go to the Configuration tab located at the top. All these presets that were listed earlier are found here. Now, creating one of these is a bit beyond the scope of this course, but if you're working with a custom set of maps for a pipeline that's unique to these configs, this is where you can set up packed maps and custom exports. The great thing with this is that these presets can be shared across machines, so if you want to standardize exporting in a studio environment, this is the place to go. So I'll just head back to the Export tab, and I'll usually do my renders in Marmoset, so the PBR Metal Rough config will do. We can up the texture size to 8K if you have a higher end machine, and now that your settings are done, simply hit the export button and all your maps will be exported to the corresponding folder. So in this lesson, we talked about getting the maps out into an external renderer. So in the next lesson, we'll explore doing renders within Substance Painter.